We will do. And we're live.
Good afternoon and welcome to the February 25th meeting of the Downtown Development Authority. I would like to begin the meeting with taking the roll call, but before that starts, I'd like to formally welcome our newest member to the DDA, Jacqueline Babcock. Jacqueline has recently been appointed by the City Council and will begin her term at representing residents of the downtown. So welcome, Jacqueline. We're grateful that you've joined our body, and I'm certain that we will enjoy working with you. So welcome aboard. With that, Chad, if you could take the roll call, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Board members, please state that you're attending remotely and the city and state you're attending from. Appreciate it. Jacqueline Babcock.
Jacqueline, I'm present. I'm attending remotely from Melbourne, Florida.
Greg Ballline.
Present, attending remotely from East Lansing, Michigan.
Kristen Clark will not be with us today. Jim Croom.
Present, I'm attending remotely from Leland, Michigan, Leelanau County.
Peter Dewan.
Present, attending virtually from Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Luke Hackney.
Present, attending virtually from East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Michael Kruger. No, Michael. George Lahanas.
Present, attending from East Lansing, Michigan and Ingham County.
Ruben Levinson.
Present, attending remotely from Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Jeff Smith.
Present, attending remotely from East Lansing, Michigan.
Mayor Stevens.
Present, attending virtually from East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Thank you. That gives us a 9-member quorum.
Great, thank you, Chad. We have the agenda as presented by staff. Are there any changes to our agenda? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda and ask for a second.
Second, George.
Seconded by George. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. We have the minutes from our January 28th meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll offer a motion to approve the minutes as presented by staff and ask for a second.
Second, Luke Hackney.
Seconded by Luke Hackney. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That also passes unanimously. We have our financial report from January 2021. Adam, are you going to go through that for us?
I'll take that, Chair, if it's okay.
I'm sorry, Chad.
Yeah, I'll run through that real quick.
Thank you.
So our January budget performance report, there's actually not a single entry on the first page for January. But if we move on to the second page, a little more action here. We got $681 from wages for some of our project place labor that we've been soliciting. And then further down, you got our total for project development at $15,569 for the month. Scrolling to the third page here, you got $348 in the near the top for repairs and maintenance. That was just one item of note, was just the fireplace, another fireplace repair and light that had to be taken care of there. Further down, negative $358, I just want to point out that was just a simple journal entry. We had to correct some charges there that offset that account. And then moving down to our treasurer's report gives you a little bit better look of our environmental site assessment that was paid for in January, $1,626.25. And we had some signs that we allocated to our signage and We Have You Covered program for the curbside pickup signs. And then you can see the remaining $13,621 was additional furniture and sundries that were placed throughout the place project. And then also attached in your packet is an updated version of the bond payment estimates. And so that is there as well for your viewing pleasure. And if you have any questions.
Are there any questions of staff from board members? Okay, thank you, Chad. Hearing none, we will move on to the draft budget, which is that, Chad, are you also going to be addressing that?
Here, actually, I'm going to do my best attempt to take this over.
Thank you, Adam.
Yes, sir. So we attached the draft budget for fiscal year 22. Keep in mind that we are still working through the numbers. We're working on getting updated property tax values and whatnot. Here in the AIR, you'll see a schedule, the approval schedule for the fiscal year 22 DDA budget. And so we'll be discussing this again at Executive and Finance next month. Vote on it and pass a resolution on the 25th of March, and then there'll be public hearings in April.
Okay. So more to follow. We'll look forward to additional information to be reviewed by Exec and Finance then in the next month meeting. Any questions at the present time or comments from board members about the draft budget? Hearing none, we'll move on our agenda. We have written communications, the letter that we sent to council with regard to art space. Heather, is there a follow-up to that, or Adam?
Chair, as I'm aware, yes, we did submit that to council. It was recognized through written communications, and I believe we're working on next steps at the moment.
Okay. So I presume that will be on council's agenda perhaps in next month meeting?
That's what we hope to make happen. Yes, sir.
We're looking to hopefully have it on a discussion only meeting agenda in the future. I think the effort was just to reach out by staff to try to figure out what they would be presenting to council, costs associated, and then a little bit of a run through of whether it would be, staff presenting or them presenting, or just kind of how the structure would be.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Stevens. Appreciate that follow-up. We have the letter that was sent with regard to the waiver letter for Foster Swift. Members will take note. We also had the letter that was sent with regard to the DDA's action on 270 West Grand River. And then there was a letter that also was sent following our discussion that went to Waste Management with regard to Pataya's billing dispute. Is there any follow-up on any of that? Heather, yes.
So I received an email from Doug Reams, person at Waste Management the letter was addressed to, and they've asked that they've met internally, and they've asked to have a follow-up meeting with staff, and I'm asking you, Peter, to attend that meeting also, because they want to come to some type of a resolution to get this issue resolved. So
okay.
Further follow-up next month after our meeting.
Very good. I will follow up and coordinate times as far as having that conversation. Then we'll report back to the full DDA on what the resolution of that matter was. So thank you, Heather. Are there any, I guess at this point, we can open up for public comment. Is there anyone wishing to address the DDA?
Yes, Chair, thank you, Chair. We have one caller in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 963. You'll be unmuted and given 5 minutes to speak. And if you do not wish to speak, please just say pass. Caller 963, you've been asked to be unmuted.
Hi, Alice Drager from East Lansing Info. Just one relatively small request. In the draft budget, which is helpfully presented by staff, the budget does break out what the expenses are per Evergreen property, but it doesn't appear to me to break out what income is per Evergreen property. And the reason I'm interested in this is because I've been trying to understand as things move forward, which property is costing what. As we take some properties, well, certainly the one that is the most derelict offline, the house, talk about demolition, I'm trying to understand what impact that has in terms of expenses and revenue. And the budget as presented does not appear to have that information. Heather, I think it was Heather, mentioned a few meetings ago that there's some possibility in using 314 Evergreen for some sort of staging of the MSU FCU project. And so I was trying to understand what that property is costing and what it's bringing in terms of how it might be used. And I'm not able to do that from the material presented. It does look like there's significant expenses on that property, but I have no sense of what percentage of the actual rent comes from that. One thing I am concerned about is the history of East Lansing basically thinking it's got something moving forward and not having something moving forward and increasingly blighting things as things don't move forward. So I have a real concern about that happening on Evergreen Avenue coming into the near future. That certainly happened with the properties just south of there, and to some degree it happened with Lot 1 where demolition was started before the contracts were even signed. So I have concerns about that kind of approach, and I would like to be able to break out what the income is. You all, I think at the request of Jim Croom, had staff begin to present the bond payment estimates every time, and I think that's a smart idea, but so far as I know, you all never discuss it, and the numbers there are obviously significant, so I think you might want to occasionally just verbally bat that around and talk about what that bond payment schedule looks like, because it's a big deal in terms of how the payments are about to get a lot bigger in the near future. So thanks to staff for, as always, creating this incredibly clear system for being able to look at the finances, and just a small request to break it out a little bit more. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your call. Any other callers, Chad?
No, Chair, that's all the public comment.
Great. Is there any communication from staff?
Yes, Chair, I just want to provide a few updates. The Place project, as hopefully everyone's aware by now, we exceeded our crowdfunding goal of $50,000. We actually raised $56,940. We've submitted documentation to Patronicity for the MEDC match of $50,000. So just waiting on that. The second Downtown Weekend Warriors program will take place this Saturday. We launched it last weekend, and it's a partnership with the Rotary Club, and a group of Rotary volunteers have volunteered their time to come down every Saturday for 6 weeks to help manage outdoor heaters, pass out hand sanitizers, masks, you name it, and just welcome people downtown. We had a pretty good day last weekend, and I look forward to this Saturday as well. We also are having the second Downtown Underground Farmers Market this Sunday. So if you guys can, if you have a chance, stop on down, take a look at the Mac parking garage and see what we've done to the place. The East Lansing Public Library, you know, they hosted their first event in the Downtown Underground called Music in the Stacks. That happened yesterday of this week. My understanding is it was a success, well received. We've launched a second TikTok challenge. We've given awards to the first round of TikTok participants and those winners. We've also completed the Why I Wear a Mask photo contest. Those awards have been given to winners and honorable mentions. I think I've mentioned this before, but we partnered with MSU's their advertising capstone course. And so the students are assigned 3 projects this semester. The first being a video-based mask challenge, kind of like a TikTok challenge. And we got to hear project pitches yesterday. So I imagine we'll be considering several of those for implementation in the very near future. Their second project will consist of a challenge that they create on their own of any topic, as long as it aligns with the Place project goals and objectives. And finally, their third project, their semester-long project, is kind of a rebranding campaign that they'll pitch to us for downtown East Lansing. So stay tuned for more to come on that. future business support programming, we've been discussing that. We looked at the budget, and we have $43,000 remaining in the business relief program. And so I guess at this point, we're just going to continue to assess needs and solicit input. And if you have additional input, we're all ears. And just to let you know, we've distributed a survey just to get a feel for future business support programming in the downtown area. And then the e-gift card program, there's been over $32,000 gifted in e-gift cards, and almost $12,000 in those gift cards have been redeemed. And then Heather, did you want to mention anything else about waste management? Or you good?
I'm good.
Okay, just making sure. And those are all the updates I have.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Adam. The Weekend Warrior project was quite successful. We actually had a nice segment on Channel 10 News that played over the weekend. So I was pleased to see that we're getting positive traction, positive activity, encouraging families and East Lansing residents to come down and patronize businesses in the downtown. So hopefully that will continue. I know I will be back out this weekend volunteering and doing what I can as a member of Rotary. So if others can join at the farmers market or the Weekend Warrior project on Saturday, that would certainly be very welcomed.
Hey, Peter.
Yes, Mayor Stevens.
Yeah, I just wanted to say really just how much or how impressed I was with the efforts that were done, not only by volunteers in the community, but also really by our staff and putting that event together, our first farmers market that I thought was very successful. It was really nice to see folks in the downtown. I was not there for the library event, but I heard the attendance there was great as well. Having folks, safely come into the downtown, support local vendors and businesses after is, obviously a tall order and in some situations, but I think that we're dealing with things in a unique way, and we're being very creative. And I'd just like to say, big thank you to everybody in the community that supported the project, but also just a continuation of support to our staff for putting this together and continuing to find unique ways. We had a long conversation at our public policy meeting, and I'm sure Luke remembers and others regarding what other things we can do to support businesses with that money, and attempting to come up with unique and creative ways to try and help people in an equitable way, and also in a way that makes the most impact. And I think that it's difficult, but it's really important work. And I think that a lot of this stuff that's going on in our downtown really sets a framework for even the future, post-pandemic events that we can hold in the downtown, things that we can do to support our businesses. This is the downtown that we want to see. We've changed a lot, but I think we've changed for the better. And I'm excited just at the prospect of, even in a pandemic, what we can do to support our businesses. And I'm excited when we're out of this to see this kind of programming continue.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens. Jim Croom.
Yeah, I'd like to just add my appreciation to staff. I won't repeat what the mayor said. The comments I endorse completely. It's been a wild success. Question, Adam, did we get a lot of press coverage? Because, as part of as the downtown goes, that press coverage will reinvigorate the downtown. People will feel more comfortable coming down as they see a successful program. And this is wildly successful. Any view on that or insight?
Yeah, there's been a significant amount of press coverage. Essentially with most activities we've implemented so far, the market, the Downtown Weekend Warriors, the TikTok challenge, the photo contest. We are getting a lot of press out of that. We're getting a significant amount of engagement on our social media platforms. And I mean, a significant amount. The preliminary numbers we're looking at, we average about 2,000 to 3,000 engagements per week. On one post from the Downtown Underground, within 1 week, we had over 25,000 engagements on that one post.
Do we have a marketing department that we're working with to actively reach out to like the TV stations so that
I
old
mean,
people
our,
like
our
me can watch it?
communications team have definitely been in overdrive working their butt off for us on this. But as far as, sending directly to news stations, I'm not sure. I know we issue those press releases and they get picked up by the news stations.
Okay, good. Yeah, hopefully we're doing as much as we can there. Thank you. Great work.
Thank you, Jim and Adam. Heather?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Jim's comments. So the press releases go out directly to all the media outlets also.
Great. Thank you, Heather.
Just anecdotally, sorry, Peter.
Yeah, go ahead, Mayor.
To your question, Jim, I know that there has been follow-up to media outlets specifically to try and organize them to be out at certain events, and I think our communication staff is taking that in stride, that this is definitely the priority for the city right now. So
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Adam, just one quick follow-up with regard to the TikTok challenge. Where would residents go to see who was selected?
So there was a press release issued for that, and I believe it's posted on our website as well. I'm happy to send a link after the meeting.
Okay. And there's also now a second challenge, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, there's a second challenge. And if you recall from the proposal, one of our objectives is to have these consistent, frequent, sustainable activities just consistently occurring. Try not to take any breaks in between.
So we'll certainly hope that the council and/or members of the DDA will submit their own individual entries for the TikTok challenge.
I am looking forward to that.
See how that goes. Very good. So,
Peter, if you do it, well, I'll do it. How about that?
yeah, there you go. Let's move on to item 4 on our agenda, special presentation. And is that Adam? Are you facilitating that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Chair. There's no special presentation today, so we should probably skip the 5.
Very good. Okay. Item 5.1 on our agenda is the consideration of a third amendment to the Center City Master Development Agreement. Before we begin discussion on this, I'd like to recuse Greg Bauline and ask for a second. It looks like Luke Hackney is seconding that. Luke, you were muted there, but I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring that up. So thank you.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we will vote to recuse Greg. All those in favor say aye.
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 I
Any opposed? Here. I'm sorry, Jacqueline?
I'm not opposed. But I live in Newman Loft, so I'm wondering if that's also a conflict for me.
I don't think it would be, but I would defer to the city attorney or city staff.
So as long as you don't benefit financially from the decision that is made and you can fulfill your duty to the DDA as a fiduciary on the board, then there is typically no conflict of interest. I assume that you have no contractual relationship, wouldn't benefit in any way, shape, or form from any decisions made with respect to Newman Lofts.
No.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for the explanation, Mr. Homier. And so we will take that as a unanimous vote to recuse Greg.
Thank you. Good. Thank you all.
Thank you, Greg. We'll bring you back in for further discussion on subsequent items. Who is leading the discussion then on the third amendment?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm going to introduce it and hand it off to our legal counsel. So as you just stated, Chair, this is what you see before you is the third amendment to the MDA for Center City. This amendment was agreed upon in a way to achieve compliance and avoid a potentially costly litigation process. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mike Homier to answer any questions.
So there was a dispute involved with respect to 3 units that are rented in Newman Lofts. Those 3 units are rented to occupants, none of whom are over 55 years of age. When it came to the city's attention, eventually we were tasked with pursuing some discussion with the owner regarding the terms of the MDA. And so based on everything that we have gathered, we are confident that the city intended for all of the occupants in all of the units in Newman Lofts to be occupied by at least one resident who is over 55 years of age, in compliance with both state and federal law. The owner of the property asserted a defense, essentially saying that they were renting those units in Newman Lofts in compliance with federal law, specifically the Federal Housing for Older Persons Act, which is known as HOPA. And while I'm not going to give any credence necessarily to that defense, I will tell you that the terms or the language of the MDA kind of opens a door to that argument. There are a host of other reasons why I don't believe that was ever the intention of the DDA, the BRA, or the City Council, but we won't get into those. I'll just mention that the language of the MDA itself says, and I'll quote, "Building B3 will be owned by the developer or its assignee or any successor thereto, and the units in Building B3 shall be designed to be leased and shall be leased to residential tenants age 55 and older in accordance with the Federal Housing for Older Persons Act." HOPA, or the Federal Housing for Older Persons Act, actually allows 20% of the units to be leased to those under 55. And that's where I think the developer asserted this defense to renting of those 3 units. They have since suspended that practice in as much as they agreed until we worked through some of these issues that they were not going to lease any more units to any tenants that where the units were not occupied by at least one tenant age 55 years and older. So what we did was we proposed in order to achieve compliance, proposed a 3rd amendment to the MDA to clarify that language because it was the city's position all along that none of the units in there could be rented to anybody under age 55. This proposed third amendment does just that. It clarifies that those 3 units that are rented to people who are under 55 years of age can continue to be rented to those tenants and those tenants alone until the natural expiration of the lease or any renewals of those leases. But once those tenants are no longer occupying those 3 units, those units will revert to the age restriction of having at least one occupant of 55 years or older, and includes provisions that unequivocally states that all of the units in Newman Lofts shall be leased only to those occupants who are age 55 years and older. And that's what the amendment states. The developer has agreed to the proposed 3rd amendment, and the City Council approved that 3rd amendment as well.
Thank you for the background. Are there questions of DDA members for our city attorney? Jim Croom.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Appreciate your work, Mike, on this. As I read through the middle section, if I could read it out loud so folks can follow, each of the 3 under 55 tenants may continue to reside in those units in Building B3, provided that upon voluntary termination of the tenancy by those under 55 tenants at the end of the current lease term or any subsequent voluntary renewals by the lease term of the under 55 tenants. Once vacated by the under 55 tenants, those 3 units, as well as the other units in the building, will be leased only to and occupied by residential tenants who include at least one person 55 age and older. So 2 issues. One, it sounds like the last clause there where we try and incorporate all of the residents in the building, and we're not just referring to those three, it sounds like that clause grammatically only kicks in when those three leases are ended, which I know that's not what was intended by either party, but it could be interpreted that way. So I wouldn't want the developer to come back and say, oh, this clause about the rest of the building being 55 and older, that only kicks in when those three current leases are terminated.
Yeah, so you have to read that, however, in context with paragraph A, which is remaining, because paragraph A still requires that the units be leased in accordance with HOPA. So at minimum, you would only be talking about those units that, in other words, you could not rent those units in violation of HOPA anyways. If
But
that makes sense.
But HOPA is the very issue that the developers were using by their own sort of perverted definition of it. So it seems like we're not, even if we leave A in, we still could have an issue grammatically in B. And then so that's issue one. Number two is this terminology of occupied by, and I'm curious about the legal interpretation of that, because many people own two homes, and the question legally is, what does it mean if I own two homes? Am I occupying both of them? So could I get on a lease and have my principal residence somewhere else, and then have, say, my son or daughter move into that unit and still argue, hey, I'm on the lease and I go up occasionally for football games and to visit my kids. So, and I have clothes there, so I'm occupying it. And if you think about it, like school districts will have verbiage in their registration requirements. And I'm looking at one, the city of Newton, whoever that is, but they use the term residency. You have to be a resident. The student has to actually reside. And it's defined as the place where a person has his or her permanent home, i.e. the place where the person dwells and which is the center of his domestic, social, and civil life. And so did council give any thought to that when they passed it? And what insight do you have for us on that, Michael?
So the occupancy requirement is required by HOPA and even under the HUD policies and regulations regarding HOPA. So we actually looked at two things. One was we inserted, at the suggestion of the age-friendly communities, inserted the as occupied. We had originally drafted it to say residential tenant, which requires occupancy. But unless it is actually occupied by somebody, at least one member who is 55 years or older, it would not be in accordance with HOPA.
Well, then what does occupied mean?
I don't know if HUD has had the opportunity to rule on that issue. So I'd have to look. But that wording comes out of the statute and out of the HUD's interpretation of the statute.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on that. I'm a little squeamish about voting in support.
I have a question, Mike. This is now the third amendment. Are we to the MDA? Do we anticipate that we're going to have scenarios down the road where we are going to have to come back and offer additional amendments for some unique characteristics or specific circumstances that run contrary to what the original intent of the council was? I think I offered an example where you had a married couple that the husband's 60 years old, the wife is 50 years old, they're party to the lease, the husband passes away, and then now we're in a situation where the surviving spouse, the wife who is 50, is in non-compliance with the provisions of the MDA. Is she then subject to jeopardize her continued residence in the building?
The short answer is yes. She would be, right? She would no longer qualify as a person occupying who is 55 years or older. HUD has actually addressed this as well. So it wouldn't be a violation of HOPA, but HOPA would not preclude that she vacate the premises either. But that issue would be governed by state, local, or in this case, contractual arrangement regarding the MDA. So it was my understanding, remains my understanding, that the city intended these units to be occupied by at least one person age 55 years and older. If that person is no longer occupying a unit, then that other person who would be living there under 55 would have to vacate the premises. So we talked about this the other night at the city council meeting, and I suspect that this would be a very rare occurrence where you might have this happen. So, but I can't guarantee that there won't be some other modifications necessary maybe to deal with those issues. I just don't know, because you get into all kinds of other issues about age discrimination and what is permitted under HOPA versus what is prohibited under state or federal law. So we're going to have to wait and see. I hope that that is a very rare circumstance where that occurs, and you may never have to deal with it, but I can't guarantee it either.
I just anticipate that there are going to be subsequent issues that are going to present themselves where we're going to be questioning whether or not there needs to be further revisions or additional amendments to the MDA. That's just my own thoughts, but
what I would add to that, I suppose, is that that would have been the same case under your hypothetical, even under the current agreement. If the city's position, and it has been, I think, the city's position, that the city never intended, did not allow, the MDA does not allow anybody to occupy any units who are 55 years or under, or say under 55. That is, there's no 20% rule applicable under HOPA under this MDA. So the city would be in the same position even after this amendment that it was before the amendment under the city's understanding of the MDA.
thank you. Are there additional questions or comments?
I do have a question.
Yeah, Mayor Stevens and then Luke.
Yeah, I am interested to hear from you, Mr. Homer, on Jim's question regarding the grammatical structure of the sentence, the once vacated by the under 55 tenants. I think that this is an amendment that's meant to be as clear as day amendment, and we don't want to have any kind of issue in the future with interpretations. So I am wondering kind of your thoughts, if you could expand a little bit further than what you did when Jim asked on that issue.
Yeah, and I think Jim raises a good issue, and I'll have to take a closer look at it, because when you read it now for, I don't know, the 10th time and somebody points out something, I understand what he's saying.
So in that situation, what would need to be the next steps if we were to change verbiage in regards to this? Would that actually need to come back to council for approval?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that yet. I mean, it would have the same intent, but a different document. So I'll have to look at that.
Okay.
And I think it's a valid point to be raised.
No, I think it is too.
Yeah.
So do we move forward at this point, or do we defer this? What's your recommendation? Because are we going to carry on with the discussion and voting on it? Is there any point to that at this point, if we want to make a modification to it?
Well, if we want to modify it, and I think that may well have to happen, then I would rather just do it once than do it twice.
Yeah.
So should I move that we defer this? Is that a reasonable course, Chair?
Well, I don't mind that action, George. I would like to, Luke had a comment and there may be other DDA
One
members.
more
that-
discussion about it. I'm fine.
Yeah, so let's at least have everyone share their thoughts and opinions. And if it appears that we should defer the item because we need to make some further revisions and it has to go back to council, then at least we have everyone's thoughts on the table. So it looks like Luke has a comment and then perhaps Ruben. Go ahead, Luke. You're muted. Thank you.
Yeah, I was waiting for a truck to drive by. Yeah, thank you. I have this is probably for council and probably also our vice chair as well. Jim, you just mentioned that the developer that their interpretation of HOPA was kind of a little perverse, and I guess I just want some clarification on what maybe the two of you might believe is the intent of that for the rest of us. You know, having never read it, admittedly.
Sorry, do you mean the MDA itself?
No,
Yeah. No, I'm talking about the issue here is that they claimed that they were doing this in compliance with HOPA, correct?
That's correct. Well, I should say that HOPA would allow them to lease 20% of the units to individuals who were under 55 without the 55 occupancy restriction.
Right. So I guess my question is, why do we believe that is not allowed?
So there were several other documents that we looked at, meeting minutes, meeting recordings, and it became clear, and we actually drafted a legal opinion on this issue, a legal memo. It became clear to us that the intent of the city was, and I believe the developer understood it at the time, that all of these units would be leased to at least one occupant who was 55 years or older.
Okay.
The problem, of course, is the MDA says in accordance with HOPA and doesn't necessarily define that. Other than to say it has to be in accordance with HOPA. HOPA allows the 20%, and I think the intent of everybody, the BRA, the DDA, and the city council was to age restrict these to 55 and older, notwithstanding the 20%, which the city is permitted to do.
And yeah, and I was going to say that the distinction that Mr. Homer made at council, which I think was well put, was that, you know, just because the 20% might be allowed under HOPA, that doesn't mean that it's required. And so the understanding that these units were going to be 55 and up remains, regardless of, you know, whether in a different development that might be sanctioned by HOPA, they, you know, or any other developer might be able to have that 20%. So, you know, our 55 and up development was meant to be 55 and up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens and Luke, for your comments. Ruben?
Just a question, is there any reason not to delay this a bit and get these figured out? Was there anybody that's going to be negatively impacted by some more time on this?
No, I don't think that there will be anybody impacted. You know, we obviously, when we have these documents, we just want to make sure that we get them approved, get them signed, and get it behind us. So, but delaying this is not going to cause any immediate harm.
Ruben, did you have a follow-up question? Thank you. Jim, Croom?
Yeah, so since we are delaying, and I appreciate that, and it looks like council will have the first crack at it again, I still have my question about the occupied by language and what we intend there, and a question of whether that could be clearer, similar to the school district example I gave. So I still have that. And then if we are, this is a more technical issue, but if we are amending, because this is an amendment, it'd probably be nice to put a governing law provision in again, because there's sometimes questions about what law governs. So each time you do an amendment, I've always put another governing law provision in so that we know which law governs interpretation of the amendment, so that they can't argue somehow Illinois law applies or something like that. So that's my only other technical comment. But I'd still be concerned with if this comes back, and I guess I need to understand what council was driving at when this was negotiated in terms of this occupied versus, if you have two homes, and it seems like you could still argue you could have student rental there if a parent signed on and came and slept there occasionally, and it's not really a full-blown permanent residence sort of language. And I don't know what was intended, but I still think it's an issue.
The occupied by, Jim, was actually a suggestion from a couple of members of the age-friendly communities committee, and it was to address the very issue that you just pointed out. Originally, the language actually did not include the "and occupied by" in both of the last sentences of that amendment B, and just said leased only to residential tenants. And the intent there was that residential satisfied that need to assume, and the intent was that they would be actually living in the location. But to further clarify your point, actually, we wanted to add the language "and occupied by" to be absolutely certain that those individuals would be not just renting and having somebody else occupy the apartment.
Okay, so if I hear you correctly, then that was council's intent. So does that still leave the question of whether this accomplishes council's intent?
I think that's a fair question to pose to our attorneys. I believe that it does, but again, my goal with this truly is to make sure that we set the record straight, we clarify things, and we don't have this come back. And I'm fine to have revisions to it to make sure that happens. That's not, any skin on my back.
Good. That was helpful clarification. Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Any other comments? I just throw this out. I know the intention of the council is to make this age restricted, to provide a diversity of housing in the downtown, to add another element that would provide diversity and add to the mosaic, if you will, of our downtown. From a 30,000-foot aerial view, my thought is and this is more a policy question than a technical question as it relates to the MDA and to the amendment that we're presently discussing, but where are we going to be a year from now if we still have, the intention of the city is to have 55 and older occupied building, and we have 3/4 of it still not filled. I guess I'm more interested in how do we resolve the ongoing challenge that it presents to our community for having an underutilized and underoccupied building. Because it's not only the developer's problem, it's all of our problem. It's the city's problem. It's a problem for downtown businesses. It's a problem for the generation of tax revenue. It's a problem for our shopping districts. And we're trying to create a downtown that is a destination location. But if we have, because of our well-intention of trying to have 55 and older housing, and yet we can't fill those units, I'd like to know what the path is going forward as far as trying to make certain that this project is a successful economic development project and all other subsequent development projects in the downtown are successful. And I think these are policy questions that need to be addressed at the council level. And so to think that we're just going to offer this amendment to the MDA and we're going to be in clear sailing and there's not going to be any further issues, I just pose the question, what do we do 10 months from now or a year from now when we have an underoccupied building? And I just throw that out there. George, it looks like you had a comment.
Yeah, I just would say I think this is a great project and I do think it fits downtown. I just think we have to, it launched and then shortly thereafter we started a global pandemic. I think we just have to give this an opportunity to be successful And if we're in this conversation 2 and 3 years from now, then maybe that conversation, I think, has to be had. But I think that, we're looking at a building that hopefully will be here and productive for 60 years into the future. And I think the first year coming in during a pandemic shouldn't derail the whole direction of it. I think we have to just give it a chance to be successful. And I think it will be.
And if I could offer a couple of comments on what you said. So, Chair Dewan, I respect your opinion on this, and also, forward thinking in regards to this project, because the truth is that a successful project is something that's good for us, it's good for the city, and it's good for our community. And that's, again, why you come to mutual agreements like this rather than going as adversaries. But the question remains, and I think that it's important to note that we're about a year in, right? We're about a year and a half in, and there was a promise made to the community to keep this development 55 and up. And I think that it's our duty as a council and as a DDA to see that promise through. And yes, if the conversation happens in a few years, and I mean a few years where we have successful marketing efforts, we know that it was marketed at the right rates to the right people in the right time frame, and that conversation still remains, then I'm sure maybe even a future council will bring it up. But for the time being, I don't think it's appropriate for us to have the conversation. And I still don't think when the developer brought it up, only a year into this development, that they wanted to remove that restriction, 55 years of age or older, is appropriate a year in, especially during a pandemic. And then that was actually one of their pitches for this issue, is that the reason why they can't rent these units, they still believe that they can, but they just couldn't because of the situation happening globally right now. And so whether you take that at their word or not, the situation remains that this is a development that was intended to be 55 and up. It was a promise made to the community, and we need to see that promise through. And if in 5 years we are still in the situation that we're in, a successful development is one that's good for the city as well, and maybe a future council brings it up. But right now, I think we need to hold it true to that promise.
I appreciate your comments, Mayor Stevens. I would hope that it would take less than 5 years for us to resolve what is an economic development challenge in our downtown. But that's my own personal thoughts. Luke, it looks like you have a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Dewan. I just wanted to say I agree with your sentiment specifically. I just don't see the 25% rule being a viable economic option in the future downtown in terms of new development. And I think that we need to discuss that more here.
Thanks for your comments. Any other comments or discussions as it relates to the amendment? Jeff Smith?
Yeah, and it would be great if we could figure out a way that it was either an incentive or a disincentive, not necessarily a policy. Because what we're trying to do is encourage an activity to occur or discourage an activity to occur. So we penalize it or we reward it. I think we're finding that it's going to be exceedingly impossible to fully define what is, what we want and make that something that will stick. I don't know how much time council has put into already reviewing this amendment, but now we're going to push it back across the table. It'll take more time to get reviewed. I don't imagine that there is going to be a language that is going to be perfectly worded in order to protect the city and allow for the activity to occur.
Thank you, Jeff. Mayor Stevens?
Yeah. So a couple of points. I think that having a conversation regarding what is the best way we can incentivize and encourage so things can be successful and we're not maybe putting a burden is a fair conversation. Wasn't on the council when this project was approved, and I think that a lot of people had their own disagreements with the structure of it, and I think that the basis of why the 55 and up component was viable was relayed to that council at the time, and they made an educated decision on that, and the developer made an educated decision to take on that risk too. And I think that's fine to have this conversation with the DDA. What we should be looking at is how do we encourage better growth in our downtown? And I think that that's fair. And if we're not doing it right now, then we change it and we help it for the future. I have no love lost towards changing things for the better. And so if this DDA wants to take on that issue and wants to approach it in a different way, I'm all on board. But we need to make sure that at least for the time being, and Chair Dewan, I respect the adage that, you know, we shouldn't wait to address an issue, but I just want to go back to the promise that they made to this community, and we need to see that through. And we can disagree on that, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, that was a promise that was not only made to this community, it was made to the council, and the public put the trust in the council to make sure that that was sought through. And so I do think it's appropriate to make sure that it is fully sought through before we were to consider any type of change to that agreement. So.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens. George.
Yeah, I want to touch upon the 25% because it seems like we're talking about a significant policy issue for the downtown's future. And I think that, you know, the prior 15 years, we saw development happen without the 25% and no diversified housing came into it. So I think letting the market ride on this will end up with a one-dimensional downtown that we will be so far down the road we can never change. So if we want a downtown that is only for students, I think that that's the direction we go if we don't make any policy adjustments to sort of push it in another direction. But I think the 25% is a good policy decision. It may not be the most in terms of finesse, maybe there's some better tweaks to it, but I think that it is a way that you have to push a bit to get the projects you want to diversify the downtown. And I do think it's way too soon in terms of this pandemic to even assess the effectiveness of it. I think we have to be past the pandemic, let the downtown, let this project start rolling, let all of the impacts and changes we've made happen. We hopefully have MSU, FCU coming in shortly, which is going to be a great diversification to the downtown. I think these are the type of things we have to push on to get the downtown we want, a diverse downtown 5 and 10 years from now. And it's, I think, way too soon to say that the 25% hasn't been effective in that, or this building hasn't been effective. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, George. Any other thoughts or comments? This is a healthy conversation. I think it's helpful for council to hear the thoughts of the DDA and our ideas to try and encourage
absolutely
development projects that are going to be successful. And I understand there's a lot of opinions. There's varied opinions on this matter. I think it is healthy as a community for us to look at, is the 25% requirement doing what we intended it to do? Is it having a positive outcome, or is it impeding economic development? And I think those are all very honest questions that we can thoughtfully discuss and try and find answers to. But George, I believe you have made a motion to defer this item to address some of the thoughts that Jim Croom expressed to Mr. Homier. Is there any additional comments on that motion, and is there a second?
I'll second them.
To our March meeting specific date. I don't have the date in front of me. Does staff have the date of the March meeting? Adam, I think you're muted if you were talking.
March 25th.
Yeah, so I would defer it to March 25th, just so we have a date certain for it coming back, if that works.
Okay, so it's been moved by City Manager Lahanas and Mayor Stevens to defer this item to our March 25th meeting. And any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So that motion to defer has been approved unanimously. I'm going to make a motion now to invite Greg Balline back into our discussion before we present our next item, and Luke has seconded that.
Yep.
All those in favor of bringing Greg back to the table, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so Greg is invited to participate in our next item on our agenda, which is item 5.2, temporary construction license for DDA properties along Evergreen Avenue. And is Nicole, welcome. Are you going to be addressing this item?
Yes, I will. Thank you very much, Peter.
Right.
And for the rest of you on the authority here who don't know me, I'm Nicole McPherson. I'm the Deputy Director of Department of Public Works. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Evergreen project and really present before you the temporary construction easement to grade onto the DDA properties that are located along Evergreen. I'm going to try and share my screen here and hopefully all of that works. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Awesome. So as most of you know, we've been working tirelessly here for probably the past 12 years plus to be able to get much needed improvement to the utilities throughout this corridor. You know, back and forth with various developments have delayed that over the years, and now we have that opportunity to be able to move forward with this project. So for those who don't know or haven't been involved, just to give a little project overview, this project, you know, as you can see here on this map, will kind of take off from where the Convexity, our Park District project, left off. They did some of the downstream work and installing the large diameter 36-inch sewer, combined sewer, and 12-inch water main here along this corridor. So we're going to take off from this point, and we're going to bring the combined sewer and water main all the way up to Oak Hill. We're going to make some much needed connections across the Lot 15 parking lot. And oopsie, sorry about that. And we are going to also do a couple of road improvements that we've been looking at for a while as well. This would, you know, extend Albert Avenue to Valley Court. So we're going to provide that much needed connection between the downtown and the Valley Court Park. It's going to bring in bike lanes and that full pedestrian connectivity between the downtown and this park, which I think is going to be very beneficial within this area. And then, you know, the section of Evergreen that is currently there, right in this area, that section of roadway is going to be turned into a pedestrian corridor. It's still going to be public right of way, and there's going to be a pedestrian walkway through there to be able to also help with that pedestrian connectivity. So what we are looking for here is, you know, as we went through and said, hey, we need to install this large diameter sewer through this area to be able to get the adequate coverage through this, we need to actually raise the grade throughout this area anywhere 3 to 4 feet. So, you know, as we go there, this is actually the temporary construction easement that is up for your consideration. As we go through here and we extend Albert there to the west, there's some areas in here that we're going to have to grade back into to be able to match the proposed grade on the roadway. This provides the, as I said earlier, the adequate coverage on the sewer. And, you know, there's a lot of grade throughout this area as well. And we would be able to match that grade outside of the property. So this is a temporary construction license that would allow the contractor to grade onto these properties to match existing, and whatever is taken out, as you see here, like sidewalk or drives, will be replaced as part of this project. Again, I just want to go over this very quickly and I'll be able to answer any questions. Just some of the key construction dates here. Obviously, they did start mobilizing, you know, last week, and we're going to start some of that mainline sewer work next Tuesday. Hard to believe it's March next week. And then we'll be continuing up. I'm going to go to the next slide here. We're going to be continuing up here on the northern part of Evergreen into the later March, and, you know, make some of those connections into April. The overall construction schedule here is to be completed, you know, end of June into July. With that, I know that was a pretty brief overview, and it has a lot of information in it, but I will stop sharing unless you want me to keep this up there, and I would be open to any questions that you guys have.
Are there questions for Nicole? So construction, actually, we're looking at beginning next week. Is that correct from your schedule?
Yes, they will start making that connection where the Park District project left off. They're going to start with that connection. Consumers Energy is actually out there this week making some extensions to their services in preparation for our construction work.
So typically when there's this type of infrastructure work that's done by the city, you're noticing all the surrounding properties to let them know dates and times and what's happening, and any resistance or any issues amongst the surrounding area properties?
No, we're still working through a couple, properties and just coordinating, what would happen on their property. We secured earlier this week the temporary construction license from the People's Church. So once, we'll get that signed by the city and get that back to them. But, we had a neighborhood project information meeting with the neighborhood last week. And no main concerns. Obviously, access, we're working with the developments down there with the Graduate to be able to get their construction vehicles in and out of the site. The biggest thing with any construction project as you start going is people are pretty okay with a construction project until it starts. As soon as the backhoes start showing up and the loaders, then they're like, wait,
You didn't
this
tell
is
us
too
you were going to
loud.
be moving dirt.
Too loud, backup beepers, so there's going to be some disruption. And, we have some key individuals that have been around a long time out on the site. And
So a quick question, Nicole, the access from the Oakwood neighborhood south on Evergreen, how long is that going to be out of commission?
I would say, as we start to enter into that northern Evergreen portion from Oak Hill to Valley Court, I would say that would be pretty much out of commission, until we're able to repave the road, probably into the June-ish date.
So are we looking at kind of March till June? Is that a fair?
That would be fair.
Okay. Just so residents and neighbors will know what they are looking forward to here. Jim Croom, it looks like, has a question.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Hi. So none of the utilities are actually going onto the property. This is just an easement to grade down.
This is an easement to grade down. I believe, though, we are relocating a fire hydrant on the kind of the 314 Evergreen property right there on the corner. That's why there's some shaded area there. At that point, when that gets that final location, we may have to come back for a permanent easement with that. But it's kind of where it is right now. And there's some overlap with, part of the 314 building is actually in city right of way. So,
yeah. So, okay, thanks. And then I assume the residents will be able to access their buildings from the back and the front at times. And it doesn't look to me like, given what the DDA's wanted, proposes or might consider for these properties, doesn't seem like this leveling or flattening of a hill, as I understand it, will affect the marketability of those properties. That was another thought I had. It seems like that might be something that would need to be done anyway in any future developments. So I don't have an issue there. Is any of the property going to be affected? Like, are there steps up that the city has to replace so that, or add because we're grading it down, or no?
There wouldn't necessarily be any steps added, but I don't, I'd have to check on the DDA properties in specific, but I know on one of the properties to the north, if there were actually taking away some of the stairs that go down because we're raising the elevation of the right of way in that area.
Yeah, so I just wouldn't want PACE to come in and say, the planning department to come in and say, like, hey, landlord DDA, this front access is now that you've given them this right to grade it flat, now the front access is wrong. and it would cost money to fix. So that was the one question. And then the other, no other residents or owners along there have expressed any concerns that we should know about?
Matt Hagan has expressed some concern with grading. We have met with him on his parcel. He has expressed some concerns about future development in this area, impacting his access to the site, because we are, taking away the road there right in front of his property. But we feel like we should be able to work through this and, provide an easement right there to that corner, not an easement, an access drive right there to the corner, where Valley Court, 'cause Matt Hagan's property is 404. It's right north of the DDA properties. And it's very close to where Evergreen and Valley Court come together. But there's no plan right now from Matt. It's just something he wants to secure in the future. And we are working with him on that.
And okay, so that's interesting. So that was his only objection was access, and that's because the road was being taken away, but we don't have road being, on our properties, we don't have road being taken away. So we wouldn't have.
Well, the road in front of the properties is being taken away at this point.
Okay.
We're talking about Evergreen.
Evergreen.
Right, okay, Evergreen.
But there would still be the access from Albert Avenue there too, so. And the alley, all the access right now comes off the alley. Same with Matt Hagan's properties.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Just kind of as a follow-up, and this is more of a engineering related type of question. So it's probably not being asked in the right terminology, but we're changing the grade, we're removing Evergreen Avenue, we're changing the grade. We're entering the spring when we get a lot of rain. We're going to have the collection of water from this rain runoff. What impact is this going to have on the adjacent park, Valley Court Park? Do we anticipate flooding, or, we're going to have the snow melting, we're going to have rain. We're actually increasing the elevation, if you will, of Evergreen Avenue. It just seems like we're kind of building a ramp, if you will, that will go over to Valley Court Park. And again, I'm not using the right terminology, but it's, are there concerns that residents in the adjoining neighborhood should have about the park over flooding, or?
I'm not anticipating any additional flooding being increased in this area. If anything, we're adding this larger diameter, this 36-inch diameter combined sewer. We have additional and existing catch basins being added in this area that will, pull off the road runoff. So it's not, going into the park per se. The park kind of has a little bit of a lower side right there, or a flat side there that might increase a little bit as it goes down, but I wouldn't anticipate there being any major flooding concerns at this point.
Okay, thank you, Nicole.
Yeah,
any
welcome.
additional questions for Nicole? So you need us to Mayor Stevens, did you have a comment?
Yeah, sorry, I had one thing. Could you keep us apprised of the Hagan situation?
Absolutely.
Make sure that we're in the know if there is a solution there. And my kind of second question would be, if there isn't a solution there in terms of access to the property, would this have to be delayed, or would we have an issue there?
At this point, I don't feel as though we're in the situation of having to delay the project. I think there's definitely a way forward to be able to provide him the an ease of mind, I guess, to indicate that we can provide it, allow him access to that corner for a development that may or may not happen in the future. And he's working also, obviously we're working with Mr. Homier and our planning staff too, to go through this issue as well, because it's something that's indicated there of having a future development off of a major street. So having us still holding the right of way easement through there, provides us the ability to allow an access through there.
Okay.
That's my interpretation.
All right.
But yes, we will keep you apprised.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens. Any additional questions? So we need to make a motion to approve the temporary construction license. Is that correct? That's what we're doing today?
That would be great.
Okay. I'll make that motion and ask for a second.
I'll second.
It's been seconded by Mayor Stevens. Any further discussion? So those in favor of allowing this construction license to be approved, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. And Nicole, thank you for your presentation this morning.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you for all your interest in this project.
Great.
And we'll keep you informed as well.
Thank you very much. We look forward to it. Is there any unfinished business, Adam?
No, Chair.
Okay. There was not an exec and finance meeting, nor was there a project and infrastructure meeting. Luke, you want to provide a summary of what happened during public policy and market development?
Yeah, we discussed what Adam was talking about earlier, just the remaining funds that we have to help businesses and trying to come up with I guess what you would call a fair solution, but nothing was really reached, and I'm kind of worried that we're kind of spinning our wheels and wasting our time when we should be distributing that money in some fashion. So I'm all for discussing it more or having a special meeting for it or whatever it takes to actually come up with a plan.
Okay, very good. We'll talk that through further and see if there are additional options where we can be expending some of those resources. Was there any discussion at parking task force?
We have not met. Our first meeting is March 10th.
Okay, thank you. And Jim, Croom, anything from the Downtown Management Board?
Just quick communication. We did profusely thank staff for the great job that they've done with the placemaking project. We've got a motion to move forward with interactive scavenger hunts potentially in downtown. We're talking about, referred to a committee, a staycation concept for maybe when the students are off on spring break, where existing families can get discounts at hotels and so on. And so we're kicking around a staycation idea. Talked about sponsoring the art festival in 2021. We deferred that because we don't know if it's going to happen yet. If it does happen, it's possible to do safely, then we'll want to be on board sponsoring that and helping. But if not, we'll keep our powder dry for the following year. And then we've also got yard signs, a lot of yard signs that say support your downtown East Lansing businesses have been going up in yards. We distributed like 150 instantly. They were wildly popular. So the suggestion was, well, let's allow people to actually pay for those. And so we've sort of, we're going to kick it off again once we get new ones printed as a fundraising type of an idea also. And then I guess finally, and I kind of raised this before, it's a DDA overarching issue with DMB and probably council, but I pointed out the lack of public bathroom facilities downtown and how and asked the question, does that harm business? Would it help business to have that open? A lot of businesses, especially during COVID, aren't allowing that. I mentioned that what I thought was a Traverse City example where they actually give stipends to businesses to allow the public to use their bathrooms. That's kind of up in the air now, but I know we also have some mothballed facilities in the garages. So I guess I would just re-raise that issue again, because I think it might help downtown. I know it presents security issues and cleanliness issues, but shopping malls have bathrooms, grocery stores have bathrooms. To me, it's kind of, it would help downtown, or at least to have it looked at. So I'll leave it there, and hopefully maybe staff or one of our committees can look at that at some point.
I think that's a great recommendation, Jim. Thank you. And perhaps, Adam, if you can make a note to follow up and and address that either at exec and finance or perhaps project and infrastructure.
Absolutely. Yes, Chair.
Any board member comments? I do have a question. We have a Brownfield Authority meeting, and because of the action that was taken on the third amendment to the MDA, and that's really the only item that's on the Brownfield Authority, can we stay on this call, or do we have to get off
I
of
was actually
this?
going to suggest maybe canceling it since that is the only item on the agenda. And
We ask the city attorney for his opinion if we can cancel it because it's the only item and it's been deferred from the other group. Can we ask his opinion on that?
Yeah, I suppose, you know, there's no applicable statutory sections, either under the OMA or the Brownfield redevelopment, where it talks about canceling meetings. So I don't know what your past practice has been. It's certainly permissible under the law, but I don't know if you have a policy on canceling meetings and when those would have to be canceled. Otherwise, you can cancel meetings anytime you don't have business to conduct.
And the question I have is that it's a separate Zoom link, if I'm not mistaken, and really, even though the DDA members are the same members that are comprised the Brownfield Authority, can the DDA cancel the Brownfield Authority meeting? I wouldn't want the public to be attempting to Zoom into a Brownfield Authority and it was canceled without their notice or adequate notice being provided.
Let's go forward with it then and defer the item from that agenda then.
we will have to log out and log
Right.
back in. I believe it starts at 2 p.m.
Oh, it was one.
No. So we will conclude this meeting. Members will have to click on and rejoin the Brownfield Authority meeting, which is a separate Zoom link. We'll have to call that meeting into order, and then because of no action on our agenda, and indicate that the item that was on our agenda is being deferred to the next month's meeting, and then we will adjourn. I suspect that's the cleanest way to go about doing it. Is that correct, Adam?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah,
Okay.
the only thing that I would add is there is an item which would be, I believe, the approval of your January 28th meeting minutes that you could do.
Yeah, very good. Okay. All right. Any other board member comments, concerns? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Ask for a second. Lucas offered a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? So this meeting is adjourned and we will momentarily begin our Brownfield Authority meeting. So thank you, everyone.